Hi everybody, this is Arkady Frekhtman. I'm a New York City personal injury trial attorney, and welcome to Last Week Tonight, where we answer your questions and we talk about your comments. And it's all about you, the viewer, on this episode. So let's get into it. Here's the most recent comment, and this is a comment on our YouTube. This is not a live. I figured I still have to do a few where I give some love to the people who comment, the people who interact with us, who watch our videos, and type up the comments. So here's a comment 18 hours ago from AJ, and he says, awesome explanation as always. I always wondered on something. Let's say in New York City, a cyclist suffers injuries to the eyes, meniscus tears on both knees, herniated disc, bulges, anxiety. The cyclist received 2 epidural steroid injections to the back. Would this be considered going for a higher amount without surgery, even if the doctor recommended a surgical procedure as a last option? Right. So if the doctor recommends a surgical procedure, but you don't do it, and you just have that medical necessity for surgery, that's known as a medical necessity case. So it does have substantial value, but if you go ahead and do the surgery, it would be worth more because you've actually done the surgery. And so you actually have that pain and suffering, you actually have that future pain and suffering, and you may have the future need for other surgeries and physical therapy, and it impacts your life more. So doing the surgery is worth more than having a need for it and not doing it. The other thing you could maybe run into with having a need for it and not doing it is a failure to mitigate your own damages. Mitigate just means to lessen your damages. So if you have these damages, you have these injuries, and the doctor says, well, I can make that better, just do the surgery. But you say, no, I don't want to do it. Well, now you're the one who's choosing not to listen to your own doctor and not to take the path of lowering your injuries by fixing them, right, with the surgery. So that could come into play. But you could still get money, basically. That's the answer. That's the short answer. You could still get money, just not as much. Okay, and then here's another question. How much could a hamstring tendon complete rupture that's been repaired? How much could that be worth? I mean, if it's a hamstring tendon that's ruptured and you have surgery, I would imagine that should be worth a few $100,000, maybe even, depending on how permanent that is, how successful the surgery was. If the surgery was not so successful and it's like a permanent injury and you have a permanent injury to your leg, it could be worth even more than a few $100,000. That's a serious case. I could actually run a verdict search. Like I mentioned in a few other videos, I now have access to a few different databases. There's Lexis, there's Westlaw, there's the jury verdict reporter. So I'll try to run that and see what I find. Also, it would be helpful to know where, because the verdicts vary based on venue, based on what city you're in, what state you're in. But I could maybe do one for the whole country and see what's out there. Okay. And then Powell says, I didn't call my lawyer last week like I usually do. So he called me after about 10 days to see if I was okay. That's good. That's good. If you don't call your lawyer, but your lawyer checks in with you and it's on the lawyer's own volition, meaning the lawyer initiates the contact, that's a great sign. That means you might have a good lawyer. You want somebody who continues the lines of communication. Communication is very, very important, because if you don't have communication, then that's a real problem. And not having communication is one of the reasons that cases don't get the value that they should, and the reason that clients are upset, because like I've said in other videos, it's basically you're going through these dark woods, right? And you don't know how to get out of the woods, if you use that metaphor. Lawsuits, are like the woods, right? Because you don't know about lawsuits. You're not a lawyer. You're just a client. You got injured. So you got to go through these deep, dark woods. So you need a guide, somebody to hold your hand and say, this is the way through the woods, and this is how we get out, and this is how we become successful. We get better medical care. We feel better. We get a lot of compensation at the end of the case, as much as we can, maximum compensation. But if you don't know, if you are going through those woods and the lawyer's not even going to call you, the lawyer's not going to contact you, it's almost like he lets go of your hand and he just runs away, and now you're abandoned in the deep, dark woods. You do not want to get abandoned in the deep, dark woods, right, of litigation. So it's always good if a lawyer calls you, of course. Okay. Let's see what other questions we have. I'm going to I'm gonna skip some of these questions and try to get a few questions that are a little bit better, so they're more like, applied to a lot of people. That way, it'll be a little bit more interesting. Some of the comments are very like specific, so I don't think it's really too helpful for everybody. Here's a question from Notarand. He says, hey, Mr. Frekhtman, is there something in the litigation system that if you have a jury selection trial, but the trial doesn't start that day, so you have to wait until a trial date is scheduled? So yeah, if you have a jury selection, usually, you pick the jury. That could take a day, 2 days. Sometimes, hey, if it's a long jury selection or you don't have very fair jurors, it could even take a week or a few weeks. But once you're done with your jury selection, usually the trial will start within a few days. It used to be, a few years ago, they had this thing called pick and pass, where you would pick, meaning you would have your jury, and then they would pass you for a week. And then you would come back a week later, and then you would start your trial. But I think they did away with that. So now it's basically like pick and go. So, it doesn't have to be that day, because remember, when you pick a jury in a lot of these counties, especially in New York, you may not yet have a judge assigned to you. So then they have to find you a judge. So even once you have a jury, you might just have to check in and they'll say, okay, go to Judge Smith or go to Judge Jones. And then once you have a judge, then that's when you start. And the judge might say, you know what, let's start. Like if it's a Friday, he may say, or she may say, hey, let's start Monday, But it's going to be within a few days. It's usually not. They don't make the jurors just like wait around for nothing. Not too often anyway. Let's see what other questions we have here. Ronald Webster says, oh my God, can I please call you about my situation? Thank you so very much. Yeah, absolutely. Just text me, 347-566-9595. I'm happy to do a consult. I just ask that you text me a little bit about your case, like the facts. It doesn't have to be long, like a sentence. Like, for example, I was rear-ended by a car, or I slipped and fell because of an unsafe condition, like a puddle. And then what your injury is, like I had surgery on my knee, or I have a herniation in my neck. And then tell me your city, like I'm in Cincinnati, or I'm in Los Angeles, or I'm in New York. And then I'll just, text you back. We pick a time and then we'll chat. And it's simple as that. I try to keep it simple. I try to help as many people as I can. Okay. Well, here's a comment from a James Troutwine. He says, and he's responding to my video, warning, what every personal injury victim needs to know about the law and basically the law and medical office mafia. And that was like a video I did based on a consultation and a client that I retained, or that retained me. And basically it was about the fact that a lot of these physical therapy offices, they kind of like find clients, right, after a car crash, and they say, hey, come into our office. And they start giving you treatment. And then they'll say, hey, do you need a lawyer? Go to this lawyer. And they'll give you a card and they'll give you a specific lawyer. And then when you go to that lawyer is like a factory, right? Because they have so many cases. They can't possibly handle all these cases by doing a good job, by meeting the clients, by going to trial, by preparing them in litigation. So in my situation, the story I told was a guy who, he had one of these lawyers, and the lawyer just said, look, we're going to just settle your case. Even though he had surgery, we're going to settle your case. Maybe we'll get 50, maybe we'll get 80. But, the case was a $500,000 policy, and there's a good likelihood that there was umbrella, like another 2-3 million beyond the 500. So really, it could be a potentially like a $3.5 million case, and the lawyer's trying to sell it short for like 50,000. So I was saying that the whole thing is like a big mob. You got to be careful with it, because, you should be able to pick your lawyer. Whether it's me, another lawyer, you should be able to choose. It's freedom of choice. You shouldn't have to be told by, some medical office, hey, you have to go to this lawyer. That's not good. So James says the video is somewhat misleading in that there's missing a thorough analysis, the amount of medical bills, the nature, extent, and permanency of the injuries and treatment, the expert to quantify future treatment required. Nobody should estimate the value of a claim solely on the insurance coverage. Not that this lawyer did. Good for this lawyer not charging to process PIP. Oh yeah, right. That's the other thing they do. So they charge you to process the PIP, which is just the law in New York. So if you get into a car crash, you're in a car, the auto insurance for the car that you're sitting in pays for all your medical care. That's known as PIP, personal injury protection. And so these lawyers, because they're paying these medical offices, like let's say $2,000 a pop, right, to get these referrals. So it's really like a bribe. They're paying $2,000, they get this referral from the medical office. What they do is they charge a narrative fee, like the medical doctor typed up a narrative and the lawyer had to pay for the narrative. So then they charge you the narrative fee of like, $1,000, $1,500, whatever. And then they also charge you another like $1,000 or so for the PIP, for the no fault, which really isn't any work. That's how they get back their bribe that they paid to get you. It's like the whole thing is crazy. But what he's saying is that, you shouldn't base what an injury is worth on the insurance coverage. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Of course, the injury is worth what it's worth. It's based on all the harms and losses. And I wasn't saying that. What I was basically saying is that because there is insurance here, right, you have $500,000, and you also have probably, because I know the carrier, I've seen other policies they write, and this particular defendant was a professional, it was a doctor. So, given it's a doctor, defendant, wealthy individual, with this particular company, I mean, the chances that they have excess or umbrella is like 99% in my mind. So based on my experience. So what I was saying is with, 500,000 plus another, like say 2 million excess, whatever it is, and this person had surgery, they may need a second surgery. This isn't a case you pick up the phone and you settle for whatever the carrier gives you, like 50 grand. This is a case you take to trial and you can get much, much more. I mean, I kind of know, I've done it. You can get much, much more. And also, I just think that, his analysis is basically correct, except for I would disagree with medical bills. Medical bills, I wouldn't really bother with medical bills unless you have like tremendous medical bills, like hundreds of thousands, because you don't want the medical bills to be a low anchor. Like, for example, if you have like 37,000 in medical bills, you try to recover those at trial, the jurors will think, okay, well, let's give you triple the medical bills, and that'll be your settlement, which is like, what, 100,000, right? 30,000 times 3, 90,000. But if you don't mention the medical bills and you talk about how it's impacted your life and your overall, your life, your kid's life, your wife, your circle of friends, you tell your human story, that case could be worth millions, right? So you don't want medical bills to be a low anchor. But otherwise, yeah, he's right. I mean, but I just can't do all this analysis that he's mentioning because the case is brand new. The case just happened. If the person's not done treating it. Okay, and then Ricey says, thanks, love you, buddy. Oh, and he gave us a super thanks. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That really goes a long way to support the channel. So yeah, if you guys are able to do a super thanks or just a thanks or like and subscribe, or, you have a consultation that you want, a free consultation, whatever way you want to interact with us, we are here. Okay, let's do 1 or 2 more questions. I have to run, but I'm going to do a few more of these recorded. I'm doing the lives every week, but I'm going to do a few more of these recorded last week tonight where I answer your questions. Mike Jordan says, yes, dialing for dollars. They have zero intention of going to trial. And he's also talking about that warning video. Yeah, dialing for dollars. They just pick up the phone, whatever they get, they settle, and it's not in the injury victim's best interest. Okay. Let's see what other questions we have. Okay, Meshkit says, can you please talk about demand letter and policy limits? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, demand letters are just when you try to settle a case, you submit a demand letter saying, here's all my medical records, I'm trying to settle this case. And then the insurance company either agrees and pays you something where you can come to an agreement, or if, the insurance company gives you very little and you and your client want a lot, then, the demand just falls apart. You can't settle and you have to continue with the litigation. I like to do the demands, like I mentioned before, with settlement opportunities, meaning I'll examine a case, I'll do a focus group, and I'll say, look, this case is worth X, pay it within 30 days. If you don't, that's fine. But then if we go to trial, it's going to be much higher. So that kind of gets the insurance company, puts them in the corner. puts the pressure on them, because what they like to do is like to drag you down, meaning, you want to start high. You say, I want $1 million. They say, oh my God, $1 million, that's so high. Our offer is only $15,000. Why don't you demand something a little bit more reasonable? $1 million, are you crazy? So then the lawyer will say, okay, well, how about 95,000? And they'll say, well, okay, we have 15, but maybe we can go to 20. You see, and what they're doing is they're dragging you down into their ballpark, and then they're going to try to settle the case, whether, whatever they do. If they start at 15, they're going to try to settle the case for 30 or 50, which is what the other lawyer, right? That other video, that's what he was trying to do. That range, you don't want that, because think about it, on $1 million policy, if they settle for like even 50, they're walking away with 950. Now you're getting 50, but they're making out like a bandit. They're getting away. They have 950 more, right? $950,000 more, but they're just putting in their pocket, and you'll never see it because you can never go up. So once you start with a demand, and they just drag you down and whittle away at your demand until they get you down into the dungeon, drag you down as low as possible, and then settle it, And so you feel like you don't have the power, right? Because you could say, look, you could demand anything. You could demand 100 million, but they just laugh at you and they say, look, you have to come down to our world, right? Like 15, 20. And so I don't even play that game. I just say, look, this is what it's worth. If you don't want to pay it, fine. We'll go to court and we'll get more than what we're talking about here. So it's a completely flipping the script on them. It's much better. It's much stronger. Okay. Leonardo says, great video. Suzette gives a happy face. And Jay says, I see this in my city all the time. I see lawyers settle cases in mass volume. I know one who doesn't even take cases to trial. He passes it off to a trial lawyer. Oh, he's also commenting on the warning video. Yeah, I mean, it's not right. It just isn't right. It's terrible. It's terrible. And he says, I agree 100%. I feel like a lot of serious injuries are not getting the value they deserve just so these attorneys can make a quick buck and move them in the masses. A lot of them even have fake reviews to boost their popularity on Google. I ask them if they are a trial lawyer. How do I know they are telling the truth if they are? Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, so to find out if they're a trial lawyer, well, one of the ways you could do it is you could look on their website if they actually have results, like, right, multi-million-dollar verdicts, multi-million-dollar trials. You could also do a search on like either. I mean, it's kind of hard for people to do a search. You could do a little bit of a search on Google, but I mean, I have access to some of these databases like Westlaw, Lexis, Jury Verdict Reporter, but a lot of those charge a subscription fee and people can't really access them. Yeah, but yeah, it isn't that easy, unfortunately. It isn't that easy. Okay, let's see what other questions we have. Gary says, I love watching Arkady's videos. This man is awesome. I sincerely hope the fellow you had this consultation with comes on board with you. Keep us posted, my friend. Oh, he's also talking about that warning video. Okay, and we got Willie Stembridge saying good evening. And Unicorn Finance is here also. Wow. He says conflict of interest. Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge conflict of interest. Okay. And then here's a question. Hey, is that if the policy limits are $1 million, that means there will be other policies like umbrella? So it doesn't mean there will be. Sometimes you have $1 million and that's the primary, and it's a single limit primary $1 million and there's no other insurance. But the fact that there is $1 million policy as the primary means that there's the potential. There could be umbrella. So there could be excess umbrella, right? Now, if you have like a smaller policy, like 25 or 50 or even 100, it's unlikely to be any umbrella there. So it's probably just that policy. But with $1 million, there could be umbrella. So it's better. Okay, I hope this was helpful. Let us know what questions you have. Please like and subscribe to our channel. And we are here for you. Our goal is helping serious injury victims and families. All the best, everyone. Talk to you soon. Thank you for watching.